Hi everyone, I just wanted to try to explain this pattern over here and explain why I believe the true Jubilee year always has to end with the number 7. And I had done a video on the Jubilee cycles and why I believe that the true Jubilee should be the year 5777. I have a video on that, and if you haven't seen it, then you might want to watch that first, and I'll just show you the video in just a second. Okay, would be this video right here, why I believe the true Jubilee year is the year 5777. And this one actually got a lot of views, but there was actually 4 parts to it. And I believe all 4 parts are really important in order to understand the pattern that I'm going to try to show you. But I'm going to try to explain the pattern and maybe just review some of this briefly. But if you want a more detailed explanation, you would have to watch these videos. Okay, but basically what I realized is that the true Jubilee cycle is based on a 50-year cycle rather than a 49-year cycle, which is the way the Jews are currently doing it. And if you base it on a 50-year cycle and you start out with the year, let's just go backwards with this year, 5777, and you subtract 50 years, you see that it alternates between a pattern of 27 and 77. So if you keep subtracting 50, you see that it just alternates back and forth between the numbers 27 and 77. And this is really important, and I just wanted to explain what I was trying to explain in my last video, because I just did a little more research this morning, and I believe I just hit pay dirt with this right here, because one of the things that threw me off is I couldn't understand why the Balfour Declaration, which would have been a Jubilee year, why it was coming up with the Hebrew year 8, because if you put it into the converter and you put in the date of the Balfour Declaration, which was November 2nd, 1917, if you put that in, you see that it comes up with the year 8. And so I just did a little more research on this, because in my last video I was trying to explain how the process actually began before that, but I didn't have all the specific information, and I just found this morning. And what I realized is that the agreement, or the declaration, was actually drafted in August of 1917. And you see the draft right here. It says, His Majesty's government accepts the principle that Palestine should be reconstituted as the national home of the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to secure the achievement of this object, and will be ready to consider any suggestions on the subject which the Zionist organization may desire to lay before them. So you see it was drafted by Balfour. Let me get his full name over here. Arthur James Balfour. It was actually drafted by him in August of 1917. So if you put in the date August of 1917, you see that it comes up with the year 77. And so it's really important, because I believe that was a true Jubilee year, the date that he actually drafted the declaration. Even though the final draft wasn't produced until November, the process began in August. So the true Jubilee year, I believe, was the year 77. And this is also the case with the UN Resolution 181, which this was in 1947, but this is not as important because that was not a Jubilee year, but I do believe that that was probably also a year 7, because what's important is that Daniel 9:27, what I've discovered about it, it's that it's all based on a cycle of 7s, Shavuos. That's what a Shavua is. It's a set of 7. So it could be a set of 7 weeks, or it could be 7 days. It could be 7 Jubilees. I mean, it's based on 7s. It could be 7 anything. So there's different ways to interpret the prophecy, but it's all based on the number 7, and that's really important. And the other thing that I want to show you is that I don't believe it's by accident that this verse right here comes up in verse 27. But if you look at the UN resolution and the events leading up to it, you see that back in August of 1947, actually started in May 13, 1947, the UN General Assembly appoints an 11-nation special committee on Palestine to study the Palestine problem and report by September 1947. And then in August 31, 1947, the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine issues its report, which recommends unanimously, all 11 member states voting in favor, that Great Britain terminate their mandate for Palestine and grant it independence at the earliest possible date, which also recommends by a majority vote, 7 of the member nations voting in favor, that Palestine be partitioned into Jewish and Arab states. So there was already a report issued, a unanimous report granting independence to Palestine back in August of 1947. So if you put that date in to the converter, you put in August 31st, 1947, you see that it's the year 7. So I believe that this was not a Jubilee year, but it's important because significant events always seem to happen in year 7, both on the Gregorian calendar and apparently as well on the, both on the Hebrew calendar as well as apparently on the Gregorian calendar. It seems to work out to be year 7 both ways. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just read this comment over here just so I can give you a brief explanation of what I was trying to explain here to Jeff. And I'm saying over here, hi Brother Jeff, sorry for keeping you waiting. I was going to try to do a video about this, but I just haven't had the chance, so I'm just going to try to explain it here. Actually, I still need to do some more research, but what happened is, first of all, I had the notion that the Jubilee years should always end with the number 7, but I hadn't really checked it out yet. Then for some reason, all of a sudden, I remembered a post that I had seen several years ago where someone had made a list of scriptures that had to do with the return of Christ that were all coming up in verse 27. I couldn't find a list like that on the internet, but a few examples are Matthew 24:27, Luke 21:27, Matthew 16:27, and of course Daniel 9:27. And I've copied and pasted those scriptures right here, so I'll just go ahead and read them to you. But this is just a small sampling. There was a list of about 20 or 30 that someone had come up with that were in verse 27 that all had to do with the return of Christ. But this one is in Matthew 24:27. It says, "For as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be." And this is Luke 21:27. "And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." And this is Matthew 16:27. It says, "For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. And then this one is Daniel 9:27, and it says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. And I explained in my last video how the confirming of the covenant has to do with the return of Christ as well as the first coming, and how it was in the year 27 when Christ came the first time. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of the comment. I go on to say, anyway, as I was searching for this list, I found a website that said that the numbers 27 that the number 27 directly relates to Jesus Christ, and the number 77 has similar meaning. This particular website was not talking about jubilees or anything. Okay, I just checked and I couldn't find that particular website, so I'm not sure why I never bookmarked that. I probably should have bookmarked it, but I can't seem to find it now. But just wanted to try to find another verse 27, because over here I had done Matthew, Luke, and then another one in Matthew. So I just wanted to try to find one in Mark. And over here in the book of Mark in chapter 13, if you look at verse 27, it actually starts from verse 26 going through 28. But over here in verse 27 it talks about the gathering of the elect. But it starts out in verse 26, and it says, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory, and then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. So it doesn't quite start in verse 27, but it goes through to verse 27. And then over here I talk about how I realized that if you subtract 50 years, it alternates between the numbers 27 and 77. I didn't realize that until I had checked it at that time. This was about a month ago. But then I go on to say, but what I'm finding out and need to do more research on is the importance of the number 27. It even comes up in several times in my tables. If you remember, I had said in one of my videos how I think the year 2016 actually reduces down to 27, because if you take the 0 out and then you add the 1 and the 6, that could be considered year 27. And then I mentioned here how it was 27 AD when the Lord came at his first coming. So the point is, I definitely believe there's something to the numbers 27 and 77, and that this year 5777 should be the true Jubilee year. Wish I had more time to try to make a video about it, but at this point we're really down to the wire. I guess we'll find out soon enough if this is true or not. So I just thought it was important to try to make a video about this, because I just wanted to explain how I believe this all has to do with the number 7, and it's all about a cycle of sevens, Shavuos. That's what this prophecy is all about. And there's different ways to interpret the prophecy. It has a number of applications. The 70 weeks can be considered years. It can be considered set of sevens, 7 times 7, as in 490 years. It can be considered jubilees. And if you do it in jubilees, then it would be 70 times 50, which would be 3,500 years. And that's what I want to talk about, is what I discovered about the Jubilees, but I'm going to have to continue with this in the next video. Thank you.